Hey, Anthony,
Yeah,
what's this executive order Trump signed today on removing homeless people?
I think it's part of a continued attempt to defund liberal states by any means necessary, while also pushing forward the Project 2025 agenda of increasing the amount of people doing forced labor in for profit prisons.
How is it defunding the liberal states?
Well, a big part of what the executive order does is essentially set new requirements on what's required to combat homelessness. Specifically, it talks about enforcing prohibitions on urban camping and loitering and squatting to the maximum extent permitted by law. So, essentially, arresting homeless people and putting them in prisons. Then talks about removing funding from any states that are not complying with that, right? We all know that that's basically targeting Los Angeles directly. LA does have a big homeless problem, as do a lot of states which have big cities in them. And this is going to allow them to specifically, just remove additional funding from liberal states. They've tried it with through education, they're trying it through healthcare, and now through the guise of decreasing homelessness they are going to be defunding liberal states that don't comply with their agenda. I think we can all agree that there is a problem with homelessness. I'm from LA myself, and we see it every day. But rather than looking at data driven methods to solve homelessness, like, first of all, just increasing housing, a huge problem with homelessness is the housing crisis and the cost of living. So rather than addressing things like that or other data-driven methods such as harm reduction, temporary housing programs, social safety nets like SNAP and Medicaid that reduce the financial burden of somebody of just living in the first place. What this is doing is just criminalizing being homeless. And in fact, not only is it not addressing those proven methods of reducing homelessness, they've actually been working to defund a lot of those things, right? We've already talked about the defunding of Medicaid, defunding of education to help people get jobs, defunding of student loan programs. In specific, the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, which is where a lot of the funding for federal funding for homelessness comes from, has had its budget reduced by over $1 billion and had its workforce cut in half by the Trump administration. Which is talking about just dissolving it completely into the rather dystopian named Administration for a Healthy America. So while the Trump administration claims that they're trying to reduce homelessness, they're really doing everything they can to increase the amount of homeless people in the US and then just penalize them from being homeless in the first place.
How does this relate to forced labor?
Well, one of the things that I think the Project 2025 is trying to do is basically replace all of the labor that is currently being done by immigrants that are being kicked out of the country and replace that with either just poorly paid, poorly educated workers or forced labor in prison camps. It's not a secret that for-profit prisons have basically been using prisoners for forced labor for a long time. And what this will do is allow states and cities to drive even more people into these for-profit prisons for the simple crime of being homeless. So yeah, ultimately, nothing that this bill does actually helps reduce homeless people. It just criminalizes them from being homeless in the first place, forces them into a situation where they're likely to be arrested for being homeless. And to quote the viral sound that I've been hearing a lot recently, if you want us to be forced to work but don't want to guarantee the necessities for the people, necessities like healthcare, education, food, then that's slavery. And that's, exactly what the Project 2025 and all these tech billionaires want. They want essentially slaves for their corporations, and this is their way to get it, among other methods.